Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show right here on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio and the LA Football Network, our city, our network, LAFBnetwork.com. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Great show for you today. Huge news. Chargers trade for Khalil Mack. Massive for the team. We're going to talk Rams free agency. My buddy Sosa Kremenjas from Underdog Fantasy is going to join us. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get Sosa in here right now, jump right into some Rams free agency talk, and see expectations about what they're going to do when free agency kicks off just next week. Here we go. Buckle up. All right, joining me again on the LA Football Show, one of the best guys in the business now. Got to know him well. Good friend of mine. Is head of NFL for Underdog Fantasy, but he's been with Turf Show times way back in the day, did Locked On Rams. So he's a big Rams guru. Sosa Kremenjas. Welcome back. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. The last time we spoke, I think, was before the Super Bowl. So it's a lot has happened since. Obviously, the Rams won, which is good. Things are well, man. I'm transitioning into this new gig still. Everything is kind of catching up. But things are good. It was fun to cover out the rest of that season. And now it's on to the offseason. It's kind of never ending.
Never ends. Yeah, I think we talked, I want to say it was before the Niners game in the playoffs, I think. The menage a trois for that matchup, and they got it done, obviously. Got done the Super Bowl, but how's life been? I mean, has it been crazy for you? Obviously, you guys do. I mean, talk to the people out there on radio that don't know. Underdog Fantasy, obviously, is fantasy. So what do you guys do in the offseason, or obviously you cover all sports? So kind of just give the good people what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah. So in season, specifically for us on the NFL team, we're covering pretty much every single injury, every single transaction, anything you can imagine really that happens on a day-to-day basis in the NFL. And obviously that's still, happening now with all the kind of releases and the signings that are going to be upcoming here in any given day. So plenty of NFL news still to come, which is awesome. It's kind of fun for me. I'm like one of those people that's kind of weird. I love knowing things first, especially when it comes to NFL news. Like, I love getting it first. It's the best. So kind of works out really well that I get to do this now. But we also have, plenty going on with other sports, like you mentioned, NBA, MLB's coming up here. And I think, they're starting to gear up a little bit with NHL and that kind of stuff too. So plenty to do. I think the NFL cycle is still going to be strong for maybe another month or so. And then we'll slowly, get a little break from that until we come back full strength next year, which will be fun.
Yeah. Do you guys do anything March Madness or mainly just pro sports?
I think they will have something for March Madness. I'm not 100% certain, but I wouldn't be shocked if something does come.
Are you a March Madness guy, or you don't get into it too much?
I'm not. I'm really not. Like, I might watch the last few games, like the Final Four kind of thing or something like that. But it's just too intense for me. Like, I can watch NBA basketball and it's like, it's good. But March Madness, these dudes are going 150% every single moment of the game. It's like, my God, I'm exhausted watching it. I honestly can't do it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't watch like any college basketball all year, but then I fill out a bracket just blindly for dumb fun and kind of pay attention for March Madness because it's just a fun betting sport too. So obviously, if you're a bettor out there, it's like, other than the Super Bowl, March Madness is like where it's at for betting. But anyway, today's show, we're talking free agency. We got free agency, 3 days away from actually finally getting here. I feel like we've been talking about free agency since December, even though we were in season still, and what's going to happen. And the Rams specifically have a ton of in-house free agents. We talk about this run it back mentality that they have, which I love, and I think they absolutely can. But let's get into kind of how they do it. Like, who are they going to be able to bring back? Who can they afford? Who are some outside guys? So let's start with just in-house guys. I wrote an article yesterday about who I think they should and will bring back. I kind of called it my mock free agency, my predictions. But who are you looking at as realistic guys that they bring back from in-house? And then we'll get out of house later.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to start right at the top, right? It's Von Miller for me. I mean, this is a guy you literally cannot afford to lose. That's just my opinion here. Not just because, he's a really dominant player or, because you paid a lot for him. Those are just kind of additives. But I think what he allows you to do on the defensive side of the ball, what he allows you to do with Aaron Donald up front, like it changed the game for this defense. So, that's a guy that I think whatever you have to do, you got to get it done to bring him back. And I think he's interested too. I know a lot of fans are kind of worried about him having fun and but he's kind of a bubbly guy like that. He's a goofy guy. So
he is.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. I mean, you should know better than anyone, right? So I feel comfort in knowing that I think he will be back. I think the Rams are confident that he'll be back. There's a chance, of course, that he leaves. You never know once free agency comes up, teams are calling, but that's the guy I think you have to bring back. And then moving on from him, Odell, maybe a little bit more of a luxury, but I think this is a guy that you really, really want back as well. And it sounds like that one is a lot more maybe mutual, at least in terms of what we've seen from the media and stuff like that. He's already come out and said he'll take less money to come back, and can't blame him. I mean, he's played with some bad quarterbacks and now he's in a really good situation. Why not leave a few dollars on the table? And of course, everyone loves living in LA, though. Those guys are celebrities more so than football players, especially Odell. So, those are the two guys I think if you can get them back, everything else is sort of like a cherry on top. This is the foundation of the team. You have to get these two back. And after that, everything is sort of playing with house money, in my opinion. Now, you look at the rest of these guys, there's a lot of good players. I think the most pertinent spot, probably offensive line, right? You look at Austin
whole offensive
Corbett
line is free
up.
agents.
Yeah, pretty much. Honestly, you got left tackle Joe Noteboom slated for free agency, center Brian Allen, right guard Austin Corbett, 2 out of your starting 5, and then of course Andrew Whitworth. Is he going to retire? I wouldn't even be shocked if he retired right now while we're recording. So I'm sure that'll come down at any point in time here. And it really depends on what happens with Whit, right? If he comes back, then you probably feel less pressure to bring back Noteboom. But if Whit retires, it feels like he almost has to become, a must re-sign, so to speak. But it's hard to say because we don't know what kind of market this guy's going to have. Teams are always desperate for left tackles. Is he going to get, $5 million or is he going to get $12 million per year? I really have no idea. But I know that this guy has spot started at left tackle for the Rams and he's looked good. Like maybe he's not a top 10 left tackle, but if he's a top 17 guy, you feel pretty good about that kind of a guy. So I would love to see him back depending on, what happens with Whit. And then I think if you can get one more offensive line back, take your pick. If you want that to be Brian Allen, great. If you want it to be Austin Corbett, great. I don't think there's a huge difference between the two. And as long as you can bring one of those guys back there, I think you really feel good about what you have in your free agency class. Now, for everyone else, it's hard to say. I don't really think they're going to have much of a shot to bring back some of these guys like Darius Williams. One of those offensive linemen, I think, will be gone, if not 2. Some of these other guys, I think they're going to get a decent amount of money, and the Rams really can't compete right now. You look at Sebastian Joseph Day, like sucks to lose a guy like that, but I really do think there's a pretty good chance, that he does leave. So after that, maybe a few smaller guys like Johnny Munt, I think you would want back. Brandon Powell, I would love that guy back. Obviously Matt Gay, but he's an RFA. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at right now. A lot up in the air, and it's kind of worrying, I guess, with free agency right around the corner. Nobody signed yet, but it's kind of how the Rams do it.
Yeah, as it sits right now, Rams are 20 million over the cap. Obviously, that won't be the case. They're masterful with moving it. Spotrac had an article out that kind of I used as my model when going into this free agency that they could free up upwards of 99 million if they, restructures, extensions. If Whit retires, that takes 17 million off the books. So, I mean, a lot of things obviously have to go perfect for that scenario, but they obviously will free up, I would say, a good portion to get back in the black. Von Miller, I agree, is the number one, just what he brings the defense. And this is something that I don't think has been talked about a lot. So I'm curious your opinion on it before I talk about the other guys, but Aaron Donald, and I'll give my opinion in a second, but Aaron Donald kind of made it stated like he's coming back if the boys are back in town. Like he was very choice with his wording that he's coming back if Von Miller's back here. So I'm almost more concerned if Von Miller goes to Denver, that could mean Aaron Donald hangs it up. I mean, do you think there's any value to that or any more worry, I guess, among the front office that they got to get this done just so they can keep Aaron Donald?
I think there is a little bit of a concern. I don't know that he's necessarily giving them an ultimatum, like, if Von's gone, I'm done, period, like that. But I do think he's serious about weighing his football future with his life, like his real life outside of football, because I don't think this is the kind of guy that's going to want to come back. If he knew the Rams were going to win 4 games next year, I don't think he's coming back. Like, I think he's retiring. You know what I mean? But I also don't think Von is going to be the difference between, 4 games versus playoffs. So I think he'll probably end up coming back regardless. But I definitely think, they can make it a little bit more enticing to Aaron Donald for him to feel comfortable knowing that, okay, they actually have a shot to maybe repeat. Otherwise, this guy does seem destined to call it quits early. I mean, he's already talked about, the kid stuff. They're back in Pittsburgh. You can't see them all the time, that kind of stuff. So it's going to suck to lose a talent like that early. But I do think as long as they got a shot to win a Super Bowl, and of course, Von Miller plays a huge role in that, you're going to have a decent shot to get Aaron Donald back too. But it is definitely a concern, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it's said and done, regardless, he's back. And yeah, there's been reports of them talking contract extension, which again, I don't think he's going to play like 6 or 7 more years. But in reality, it kind of helps the money side when they can spread his money out. They can give him more up front. And then so that's what helps their cap too. But I know I've talked to some Broncos reporters and they've said that there's like a 20% chance that Denver goes after him. So I think it's more than likely that Von's back in LA, because I really truly believe it's between those two teams. I don't think anyone else really has a shot. I think it's Rams or Broncos. And it seems like he may want to go back to Denver, but Denver may not have the money or the wherewithal to sign him. And the Rams, as weird as it sounds, might be able to give him more money, as weird as that is, it sounds, considering where the caps sit right now. But yeah, and then you mentioned OBJ. I feel like OBJ, I don't even need to talk. I think it feels like that's just a done deal, right? That just seems like it's okay. When are they signing? I would think he'll take less money, A, because he's happy here, but B, because he can't play till November. So that's going to be probably a pretty back-ended contract to save them a little bit up front. You mentioned Darius Williams. I know he's your guy. D-Will is, I love Darius Williams. I've seen some out there saying he can get $14 million per year. I think it's more like 9 or 10. How important, though, do you think he is to this secondary? Because to me, after him, it's a pretty big drop off if they don't bring someone else in or really allocate a lot of draft picks. I just feel like he's so integral to that secondary. I mean, how important do you think it is to get him back?
Yeah, I think it is important. Unfortunately, I don't expect it to happen. Like you said, I think he's just going to be priced out of their range. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of space. I don't know that they can take on another $10 million per year with D-Will. But, I would be shocked if he's not making like bottom line at least 10, closer to 12, maybe 13. You look at last year, a guy like Adoree Jackson. I mean, he signs for 13 million per year. Is he much better than Darius Williams? I don't know. That's kind of a question for the public, but there's a lot of guys here. Kyle Fuller, $9.5 million, obviously a solid player too. So I think it is a concern. That's probably my biggest concern outside of offensive line. I'm looking at cornerback too. I don't know that there's anybody on the roster that makes me feel comfortable with, slotting them in as a starter going into next season. Robert Rochelle was shaky in his rookie year, which we all kind of maybe expected, right? This was a guy that I think needed a little bit more development. You look at Adonte Dion, he's a free agent. David Long, he gets benched and kind of starts and, pulled in and out of the lineup. So it's a concern. I do think it's a big concern. And if they can't get D-Will back, which I don't expect them to, maybe look at the market and try to find one of those spot starting veterans that's, maybe in the $2 to $5 million range where you can kind of give yourself a little bit more time for Rochelle if he needs it or if he fails. But I also wouldn't rule out, looking in the draft. And of course, they don't have any picks in the first 3 rounds, really, which makes it tough to find a starter, especially day one. But I would definitely look at that position, as well as the O-line is probably the 2 that I've circled right now that could be the biggest issues going into next year.
Yeah, and going to that O-line before we get to out of market guys, because you mentioned all of them already. The starting, guard in Corbett, center in Allen, Noteboom, who's a spot starter who could be the starter if he's back and Whitworth retires, and then Coleman Shelton, also a free agent who's been a depth guy that has versatility that can kind of play along the line. So to me, it's going to be really important to get as many of those guys back as you can. I was very optimistic that they got all 3 of them back. I actually put all 4. I think I even put Coleman Shelton just because I think that's what they're really focused on, just because they know the system, they know the scheme. There's continuity there. I felt like they overall play well. I know there's kind of an up and down relationship with fans and what their thoughts on Brian Allen are, but I mean, he was a top 10 center in terms of Pro Football Focus grade throughout the year, and pretty good against the run blocking and pass blocking. So I think you don't want to, mess that up and bring someone else in. But again, if he's allocating $7-8 million and Corbett's getting the 10 range, I just don't think they can do that. So if these guys take hometown discounts, if you will, to come back, or it's gonna be interesting because, and this is how we can transition to the out of market. If they don't, let's say they get Corbett back. That's the only one. Only get Corbett back. They get priced out on Noteboom. They get priced out on Allen, and maybe they get Coleman Shelton back too as like a depth guy for like a couple $1 million. Do you think they even have enough money to go after someone to come in, or is it literally they're going to be starting a draft pick in the 5th round at center next year? What's your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
it's tough to say, right? It really depends on how much they restructure and all these kind of things, right? Because like you said earlier, they have the flexibility available to them if they really want it. Now, fans are insane. They think they're going to open up every single dollar they can. They're going to have $100 million. No, they're not going to do that. That's just, God forbid something happens. You kind of have that, card in your back pocket, so to speak. Not going to happen. I don't think the Rams are going to be super active in free agency. I really don't. If you do lose, your offensive lineman, maybe a Corbett, someone like that, and you want to bring someone back, a replacement, maybe that's not going to cost a ton. A guy that's on the end of his, legs, his last legs, we'll call it, maybe going to try to want to win a ring like most players do.
Yeah.
Bring a guy like Roger Saffold back. Like, I would love that addition. That would be a good 1-for-1 replacement for Austin Corbett. I actually mentioned it on Twitter yesterday as well. If you lose Corbett, he's an unrestricted free agent. If you sign Saffold, he was cut. He's not going to affect the comp pick formula. So you get maybe a 3rd, maybe a 4th, or maybe a 5th, whatever it is for losing Corbett. You bring back a Saffold, probably at a cheaper rate, and you still get a pick in return for that. So, there is flexibility there. I think there are some options, especially you look at the guard market. A lot of those guys have been losing their jobs over the last 2 years for whatever reason. Yeah. So there's options there. I think they don't really have to be hard pressed and feel, pressure to overpay one of these guys. But at the same time, I think they're going to let them test the market, see where their markets are at, because I really don't know what to expect for anyone outside of maybe Von Miller. I think all these contracts are kind of like, I could see it being $4.5 million a year or 12.5, like for a lot of these guys.
No, totally. And Corbett, especially, like I could see him coming back to the Rams for like a $5 million deal, but I could also see him getting 11 or 12 by some team, which the Rams can't pay. I think I had him priced at 9 in that article I put, which is, pushing it for their value or what they're able to spend. So, but yeah, Salvo, when he was cut yesterday, I was very surprised that he was let go by the Titans there. Has had a very good career there in Tennessee. Obviously, the Rams fans, love him back from his days in the Jeff Fisher era and the St. Louis Rams. And, but he was on that Super Bowl run team. So he was here when Sean McVay was here. So there is familiarity there, obviously. So I think that's definitely an option if they can't afford Corbett. I think Corbett's probably the first choice just because of how he's been groomed in the system, how well he's played. But obviously, if they get maxed out, that's a good consolation if they can get Saffold. So looking out of market, let's talk corner first. If you have any guys, if they're not able to bring Debo back, or even if they are, there's some good veteran corners. Obviously, they're going to have to look in the bottom end. They're not going after J.C. Jackson. They're not going after Stephon Gilmore. They're not doing any of that stuff. It's going to be these bottom tier guys that are CB3s, can maybe spot start CB2s. But who are maybe some guys you think they could potentially afford, especially if they're not paying D. Will $10 million a year?
Yeah, I'm taking a look at this list, and there's some interesting names. Again, it's hard to gauge exactly how much guys are going to get paid. I think that's probably the toughest part of free agency. You got fans thinking guys are going to get pennies versus what they actually get. But you look at this list, a couple of names that catch my eye. Dante Jackson from Carolina. He was a former first-round pick, I believe. Ran like a 4.2. Dude's super fast. Obviously didn't work out there. He could be a guy that maybe gets paid a decent amount. I'm not 100% sure, but that's the name that I would have circled. I'm not exactly sure what kind of market he's going to have. But then there's some guys that, are maybe more so on the veteran range that kind of catch my eye here as well. A guy like Desmond King. Now, he's more of a nickel corner than anything, but at the same time, the Rams don't really have, a slotted in nickel corner either right now. So maybe they look at a guy like that. Much more comfortable in zone than he is in man. And of course, the Rams run more zone than anybody, so that could be a nice fit there. A Jimmy Smith. He's very old now. I think he's 34. He's had a lot of injury issues and stuff like that, but one of the better boundary corners over the last decade or so playing in Baltimore. Some other guys like that. I think there's some. I'm really intrigued to see really what's going to happen with the Rams, because I want to see if they're going to be able to get anything out of house, like we're talking about, where they can sell any veteran on the idea that take a few less dollars and we can give you a shot to actually go, not just play for a Super Bowl, of course, potentially get a ring. But I think a lot of these guys now have to start to consider, if I play behind this D line, if I play in this defense for a year, maybe take $5 million instead of going to play for Jacksonville and take 12.5. Maybe I'm setting myself up better for the next contract, right? And I think a lot of guys kind of lose sight of that. And so if I'm looking at all the guys that are getting paid coming out of this franchise year after year after year, that's something I would genuinely consider. Now, they're not going to get guys for dirt cheap. That's not how it works. But at the same time, if it's kind of close between the Rams and someone else, I think that's something they have to consider. So I'm curious to see if they're going to be able to sell anybody on something like that.
Yeah, because I think I agree. A lot of if they do get any out of market guys, it'll be for that 2 to 3 year, maybe even 1 to 2 year. They're not going to be getting any guys on 5-year contracts. So set themselves up. And one of the guys that I kind of looked at was Patrick Peterson, veteran corner. Rams love their big name star guys. Patrick Peterson is a big name. He's not a star anymore, I would say, but still a productive corner when he played in Minnesota last year. He was an $8 million cap hit last year. I could see him getting around that 5 to 6 this year. So potentially could be affording. So, I think that's a guy too, to kind of look at that. Hey, if he wants to come back to the NFC West after all his days in Arizona, I think that'd be a fun one to look at. So last thing for you. So it's just got to ask, will there be any market for the Rams for Bobby Wagner? Or there's no way they can afford this guy, right? But I've seen a lot of chatter on Twitter that there's the potential.
I think they're going to try to, reach out to him. I certainly do think there's going to be interest from the team, which a lot of people don't think, because the Rams don't pay linebackers really. They don't invest in that position high. So I think there will be some sort of a market from the Rams. And I read Jordan's piece, Jordan Rodriguez, from the other day. She said that she does think the Rams are going to be interested. And then you look at certain other people. I think it was Jordan Schultz who said on Twitter that the Rams were one of the teams, and some of these other, big name media members. So I think they will be in the market for him. But again, it comes down to, what is he going to, prefer? What does he want? Does he want a chance to go win a ring and play the Seattle Seahawks twice a year, get his little revenge there? Or do you want to go play for, the Pittsburgh Steelers or somewhere else where they can maybe triple up what the Rams are going to offer you? So it's going to be interesting to see. But he is a local LA guy. That's where he's from. And it would be nice to play Seahawks twice a year, get a chance to win a ring. I think that's really, really a good chance for him to find a great team with the Rams, not just because they're the Rams, I like them or whatever, but I genuinely think that could be interesting. That's a guy you would love to learn after. Ernest Jones, someone like that, of course. But it's interesting to see. I'm curious to see what he's going to do, because you're going to have that one hand where, maybe you have a ring chance, the other one where maybe you have some more money. And I don't know if there's going to be anyone that kind of meets him in the middle there that gives him both chances, but I think the Rams are going to go after him.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money here in LA outside of football he could make. So I think that's what we gotta push for Wags to do that. It's funny. It feels like the Rams are kind of the NBA team in the NFL. That's like, guys, let's build this super team. Just come hang out with us. Come have fun. Make a little less money contractually, but we can make money elsewhere. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. That all starts Monday. Free agency frenzy. Can't wait. Sosa Kremenjas, my man, head of NFL Underdog Fantasy. Thanks so much for the time, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, my man. It's always fun to hop on.
Always great. Thank you. So we'll be right back. Take a quick break. We'll be back at the bottom of the hour. This is the LA Football Show. Welcome back to the LA Football Show right here on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio on the LA Football Network, our city, our network, LAFBnetwork.com for everything LA football. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Hope everyone's enjoying your Friday. If you missed the top of the hour, we had Sosa Kremenjas from Underdog Fantasy, formerly of Locked On Rams, talk about Rams free agency, some possibilities of, who they bring back in-house, if they go outside at all to bring anyone. Obviously, when you have the run it back mantra, you don't really need to go get anyone else. You just need to keep your team intact. So I think that's what the focus will be for the Rams as they try to free up some cap space and really bring back the bulk of their players. So we got all into that. If you missed it and you're just tuning in, you can find the full episode up on LAFBnetwork.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can find that and listen to the beginning part. But, bottom hour now, we got to go to the Chargers, who in a monster move brought in Khalil Mack, traded a 2022, so this year, second round pick, and a 2023 sixth round pick. Tremendous value, I think. So we are going to get all into that. LA Football Show brought to you by our betting partners. BetUS is for all California listeners. You can find a link in the description. Also a link on LAFBnetwork.com. You just look at the menu and look at LAFB betting offers. You're going to get 125% welcome bonus when you sign up. That's free money to play with. And we got March Madness around the corner. One of the most fun sporting events to bet on. is March Madness. So make sure to check out our betting partners. If you're listening on YouTube or podcast and you live in, Arizona, New Jersey, Colorado, any betting states out there, we have partnerships with DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, Caesars, all those fun ones as well. So, but for California listeners, BetUS is your platform. Head to the link in the description or on LAFBnetwork.com and make use of that. So, man, I mean, I was out yesterday. So we did a full instant reaction. You can find it on LAFB Network. I did it with Dan and Jake from Charters Unleashed. So it was just the news bombshell. So I was out with my daughter. I work from home, and she was going crazy trying to work all morning, and she's just, getting antsy and, climbing all over me and not letting me get stuff done. So I'm like, all right, I finished the bulk of what I needed to do. I got this Rams free agency article up that you can find. You can check that out if you want more in-depth stuff on free agency that I wrote about. But I'm like, all right, let's get out of the house. We'll get you, get a walk in. Maybe you can take a nap because you hadn't napped yet. So I get probably 3 blocks down the street, and then my phone starts blowing up. And it's this Khalil Mack trade that is, it's a great move. It's probably a good move for both parties. On the surface at first, it was like, man, that is all the Bears got, a second and a sixth for this. You look at Von Miller, who I think Von Miller today is better than Khalil Mack. It's close. Khalil Mack is still a game changer. But if I had to go tit for tat, I'd probably take Von Miller. But you look at Von Miller traded last year to the Rams, and he got back a second and a third in this year's draft. So it was a little surprising that, Mack couldn't garner at least, a fourth or a fifth or even a third, just kind of simple, same compensation. But I think the Bears are clearly in full rebuild mode. They just released another, Tariq Cohen. They released one of their nose tackle as well this morning. So they're definitely with Matt Eberflus over there, new head coach, new GM. They're building it, tearing it down and building it back up. Which, when teams do that, you want to see them just go all in. Don't step around it and say we're not rebuilding, and you try to keep some key pieces, but then you rebuild it. If you're going to rebuild, just go all in, tear it down to the studs, and then you can do whatever you want with it and do the full rebuild, the fix it or flip it model. So the Chargers, on the other hand, are clearly showing that they are all in. They are all in, and we haven't seen them really be all in probably in the Telesco era, the Tom Telesco era. And it's refreshing to see that they are committed to, okay, the window is now. We've learned time and time again that when these quarterbacks, if you have a even top 10 quarterback on a rookie deal, that's your window. Because once that 6th year comes and you got to re-sign him because you're not going to lose that quarterback and go into QB purgatory, you're shelling out 20% of your cap space to your quarterback. This is the time now where the Chiefs, we're going to start seeing how that they can really build around Mahomes now that his new contract is taking effect. The Chiefs, Mahomes contract, $45 million against the cap this year. Last year was $7 million. So we'll see how teams like that, the Cowboys with Dak, how their roster construction looks now that they're no longer rookie quarterbacks or rookie deals, and they have to build around their QB making $40+ million. Well, the Chargers now entering year 3 with Justin Herbert. They have 3 solid years of all-in football where they can go and get kind of whoever they want. You got Herbert, this is his 3rd year. You got his 4th year, and obviously they're picking up his 5th year option. So you got 3 years that he'll be still on this deal. And that 5th year option will be a lot more expensive, obviously, but it still won't be the $40 million number. And, who knows? Who knows if Herbert's one of those guys that, doesn't need to be the highest paid QB and would rather, allocate money elsewhere to keep the team going. But, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, we're not there. 3 years. So you know the quarterback you have. Now we're going into year 2 with this coaching staff. Brandon Staley, Joe Lombardi, Ronaldo Hill, just brought in Ficken, a new special teams coordinator, though. So you now you kind of know what the expectation, right? You know the scheme. It's not last year was kind of a feeler year. Obviously, the expectation was playoffs. The hope was playoffs. When you saw how good they could be at certain games, obviously it felt like a huge letdown when they missed the playoffs at the end of the year. But if we're being real with ourselves, last year was a feeler year. Let's Let's get a feel for the coaching staff. Let's get a feel for how the scheme, how they implement the players that were already on the roster. And then year 2 is really when we can give Brandon Staley a true measuring stick, because now he has a full off season to kind of build the team he wants. And now we see with this trade yesterday just how much say Brandon Staley does have in personnel decisions. I'm not sure if Anthony Lynn had that during his day. I don't know if he wanted that. I don't know. But Brandon Staley now has shown, just in this one move, Khalil Mack, big name, game wrecker, a guy that played for Brandon Staley back when Staley was the linebackers coach in Chicago with Vic Fangio as his DC. And he also coached Von Miller in Denver, who's going to be a free agent. So this tells me that, you know, free agency, they could have got, you don't want to get in a bidding war. And they have Uchenna Nwosu. They have, I mean, I don't think he'll be back anymore, but Uchenna Nwosu as well at that edge position. So I think that shows me that was very clear that Von, from stuff they hear, was basically going, like we talked in the first segment, Denver or Rams. Even with the connection with Staley, I think it was the Broncos or the Rams where Von's going to end up. So I think Staley knew that, because I think he would have been, absolutely, if he could have got Von Miller for $12 million, $13 million, I mean, I think he would have been in on that, considering what Khalil Mack's contract is. But I think realizing that wasn't going to be an option. So then we went to, step 2. And you have to think, okay, do we get Uchenna back, who I thought had a good season, showed promise and improvement throughout the year? Or do we go and make a splash, be in the news cycle like the other LA team, the Rams? It always is in the news cycle. Not that that's your motive, but you want to get people talking about you. And I don't think anyone would argue that Uchenna Nwosu, no disrespect, is at the level of Khalil Mack at this point in his career. Can he get there? Maybe. I mean, he's only 25 years old. But what Khalil Mack brings you is a true ability to wreck a football game. Nwosu, to this point, hasn't been that. He's been a nice complementary pass rusher to Joey Bosa. Khalil Mack is a premier pass rusher. Top 10 for sure. Some could argue top 5. I don't know if he's there anymore at 31 years of age, but top 10 for sure. And now you pair that with Joey Bosa. That is scary. Because if you look at how Super Bowl caliber pass rushers or pass rushing teams are built, very rarely, not unheard of, but rarely do you only have one premier pass rusher. Very rarely. Almost always you have 2. Doesn't necessarily have to be both edge spots, but like the Rams, you had Von Miller last year and Aaron Donald, and then Leonard Floyd's a hell of a complementary piece as well. But those were your 2. Tampa Bay had Shaquille Barrett, JPP. They had 2 premier pass rushers. Denver, all the way back to the 2015, you had Von Miller. They brought in DeMarcus Ware. You need those 2 premier guys. It's not, you're not as likely to find long-term Super Bowl success with 1 premier and 1 complementary. So now they got their 2 premier. They got their Von Miller and Aaron Donald. Their Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. And you have it with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Now, Mack last year hurt. Missed 10 games. Only played in 7. So I know there's some people, some of the naysayers out there will say, well, they're not getting the same player that he once was, the all-pro player. And, they're not. He's 31 years old, so he's not on that same level, but still has been a Pro Bowler every year of his career, minus his rookie year and last year, where he only played 7 games. Before last year, he only has missed 2 games total in his entire career. So I wouldn't say there's health concern there. Obviously, you want to see how he recovers from this latest injury. But here's another little comparison. In those 7 games, he finished with 6 sacks. Uchenna Nwosu played every game of the season, all 17 last year, finished with 5. So I think that shows you Again, Uchenna, I think, will get better and better, only 25 years old. But that shows you the immediate upgrade you're getting with Khalil Mack. And Khalil Mack in Chicago last year wasn't rushing the passer with Joey Bosa on the other side of him. He was the guy getting double and triple teamed, just like Joey Bosa was last year. And that's another thing to look at. As talented as Uchenna Nwosu is, and I think the ceiling is high, he wasn't a guy that offensive lines and offensive coordinators were worried about double teaming. They focused on Joey Bosa, stop Joey Bosa, we'll leave one-on-one over on the left side. Now you can't do that. You either double both somehow, and then if the Chargers get even stronger in the inside, which they're going to do, they're not done yet, which we're going to get to before the show wraps up. I mean, good night. I'll put a question up. We'll use a sided debate. We haven't had a sided debate on the show in a while that I've talked about, but I'll put it up on LAFBnetwork.com, just on the homepage. We already have some prop bets up with our friends Pickup. Who has more sacks, Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack? How many sacks does Khalil Mack finish with? The over-under set at 8.5. So head there to play with those. I'll put the links in the description also. But we'll put a debate up. Who has the best pass rush duo now in the NFL? And this will be tough because we kind of need to wait till free agency. So maybe I'll put it up, but I'll make sure it lasts through free agency, because that's, I mean, where does Von Miller end up? Like, if Von Miller's back in LA, then obviously Von and Aaron Donald are in that conversation. I'm hearing chatter that the Broncos are going to be going after Chandler Jones. I'm not confirming anything. I'm just hearing chatter. But if you have Bradley Chubb and Chandler Jones, that's a very, very good pairing. I mean, the AFC West is nuts, man. Nuts. Max Crosby, obviously great with the Raiders, but I mean, I don't think he has a second. Ngakoue was great. Is that in the conversation of Bosa and Mack? So we'll put that up. That'd be a fun conversation, because I don't know if you can really, you'd be hard pressed to find a better pair. Real hard pressed to find a better pair. So unless Vaughn returns to the Rams, and I think Vaughn and Miller, which is great. Both are LA teams. Top two pass rushing duos in the land. Both reside in LA. Can't beat that, right? But, you look at Khalil Mack's contract here. 3 years left on his deal. There is some voidable years there. I'm still trying to gather all the info on, all the contract language and whatnot. But this season, he has a 17.5 or 17.75 million cap hit, which the Chargers take fully on. And then as it's listed, 22.9 next year and 23.25 in 2024. Again, they can move money around. I think there's avoidable years there or something like that. But anything, I mean, the good thing is he's under contract for the next 3 seasons. So it wasn't like a trade where you have like a 1-year rental. So that's nice. But because of how the Chargers and Tom Telesco, to his credit, has constructed this roster thus far, even with this trade, they are a top 3 team in cap space in the NFL. Meaning, they aren't done yet. What's that Marcus Peters meme? They ain't done yet. And we're going to talk about who else they could go after. Quickly, got to talk about, though, a new sponsor of the show. It's been a couple weeks now. BetterHelp. Is something preventing you from achieving your goals? Something interferes with your happiness? Check out BetterHelp.com/LA football for the help you need. It's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online. A lot of people, we talk about mental health a lot, and maybe one of the concerns for people is they don't want to find someone, go into an office, sit in front of someone. You can do this from the convenience of your bed if you want. You get timely, thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And like I said, don't have to sit in an uncomfortable office. You can do it from the comfort of your home. Licensed professionals, counselors who specialize in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, grief, self-esteem. Everything you share is confidential. It's convenient, professional, affordable. Got to check it out. I want you to start living a happier life today. And as my listener, you get 10% off your first month by visiting BetterHelp.com/LA football. So visit our sponsor, betterhelp.com/LA football. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, betterhelp.com/LA football. All right. So I said, I don't think they're done yet. And this is, I'm going to say it one more time. This is the culture shift that Brandon Staley has brought. I talked about it all year long. And after that last game of the season, there was like so much hate created around Brandon Staley. 5 weeks in, he was the coach of the year. And all of a sudden, after week 18, narrowly missed the playoffs. There's, the controversy with the 4th and 1 from the 18, the timeout usage, all that stuff. And a lot in the national media, no Chargers beat reporters because they know. But even Chargers fans, a lot of you guys, all of a sudden want to Staley out. Doesn't deserve a second year. Clueless. I think one national podcaster called him, what was the word he used? Arrogant. But they weren't looking at the big picture. Obviously, the goal every year is to make the playoffs, give yourself a shot for the Super Bowl. They didn't reach that goal. So yes, it was a letdown. Mistakes were made. But when you look at the bigger picture, there was a culture shift created and an identity was born for this Chargers team, for this Chargers organization that they haven't had maybe, since the Marty Schottenheimer days? They created a identity. 4th and Staley. I'm wearing the shirt. They got ripped apart by a lot of people, but they have an identity. They trust their guys. They know the talent. They're not playing scared. They're playing to win. That's an identity. They have a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. Face of the NFL. That's an identity. Culture change in the building. How they do things. How they operate. How they prepare. That was brought in by Staley. Now, that what they lacked in that identity was defensive prowess and defensive smash mouth lockdown football, which Staley had been a part of every stop in the NFL. In his 2 years in Chicago, one of the top defenses in the NFL. In his 1 year in Denver, one of the top defenses in the NFL. In his 1 year as DC with the Rams, the top defense in the NFL. And then last year, the Chargers, one of the bottom defenses. Now they go get Khalil Mack, and they're not done yet. I think, and I'll wrap up with this, J.C. Jackson will be a Los Angeles Charger. I was so confident on the live stream yesterday. If they don't sign him, I'm going to donate $100 to Children's Hospital LA. But even if they do sign him, and when they do sign him, I'll donate $150 because we gotta still give back. And Children's Hospital LA obviously has a close place to my heart for what they did with my daughter. So anyone that wants to jump on board that and match, I think that'd be great. But Chargers get Khalil Mack. I think they're going to get J.C. Jackson to become their Jalen Ramsey of the secondary. And this thing can really take off, and we can see this team really be fantastic and a true Super Bowl favorite out of the gauntlet that is the AFC. So that's all the time I have. Make sure to check out the full show and our full live reaction yesterday on LAFBnetwork.com. Thank you so much, all. Have a great weekend. I'm Ryan Dyrud. This was the LA Football Show. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.